Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome once again to another episode of adapting AU units to GBO2. This is going to be the new name of the series, mostly so that it will sound at least a bit better and it won't be as much of a mouthful. Today I'm joined once again by Alter. Say hello, Alter.
What's going on?
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
That is good to hear. Today we're going to be covering two more units from the survey, and those two units that we're going to be covering for now are going to be the Freedom, not the Strike Freedom, the normal Freedom, and the Gundam Double O Riser, one from Seed and the other from Double O. We already have covered again the stats, as you'll see right here. We've covered the base stats, the HP and such, and we'll explain why. Starting off with the Freedom at 650 General, 4-star obviously. It's gonna have 16,000 HP, which already sounds very low, by standards. But if you notice, its ballistic beam and melee resistance are 30, and that's because it also will be given the facelift armor, which you cannot see it yet, but it's one of the special equipments. Actually, I'll move you over a bit, Alter, just to be able to show the special equipment at least from time to time. So let's.
Rude.
But right there, as you can see, the facelift armor is pretty much a well-known component of most of the late CD units. So I thought that would be a good idea to use it as a possible Chobam armor or anything else, because was it that the facelift armor just made it immune to, if I remember correctly, to physical impact?
Uh, I gotta refresh my memory on Seed a little bit. I don't know. I don't know if it made it like fully immune, but it greatly softened the blow.
Obviously, but you get what I mean.
C- Yeah, because that was used to some extent to explain why the strike Gundam could just shrug off the conventional shell firing weapons that all of Zap's stuff had up till that point, up until they got their Goku equivalent.
Yep.
Which is the same thing of the stolen Gundams, because they obviously had beam weapons, but I don't know, man. Seed things. It's
No, it says virtually immune to solid body impact attacks. That is interesting. That's why probably IBO and Seed fans are always at the front of whose unit would win in a fight. But that's really funny, honestly, in the long run, if you think about it.
until they get funneled.
uh, all resistances, as you probably have already noticed, are within 30, meaning beam, ballistic, and melee resistance. 32 range strength, 33 melee strength, 130 movement speed, 220 top speed, 75 thruster gauge, 70 turning speed, and we're going to be talking about the melee priority, counters, parts, weapons, and skills. So let's begin. I'll start
Uh
right off. Sorry.
oh, just as a quick aside, I figured we should comment on the cost. So, in a vacuum, I feel like it makes the most sense to make the flagship MS of a given series be 700. And I like naturally to my mind, I would have said, okay, Freedom Gundam 700. But then you have to consider, like we talked about it a little bit, and when you consider just posterity, like eventually adding the Strike Freedom and the Infinite Justice, and that tier of MS from later CE rather, then it kind of makes sense that you would have this generation kind of cap out at 650.
And not only that, but we also have to remember that we're going to be getting the Seed of Freedom series as well eventually.
That's true, yeah. I mean, God, what the hell do you even do there? Like, do you just do you just start making 750s?
I mean, if I remember correctly, they do, from what I've heard, do not quote me on this, but from what I heard, they do get rid of the nuclear generator, so the neutron jammer is no longer in effect. So I guess technically you
Oh,
could make
really?
them lower cost in a way. You could make them like 600, 650, depending on how they are represented in the actual movie. But we'll find out as things happen, like we always do.
Maybe I'll still get my 750 cost Buckethead Gian or whatever the hell they're calling it. Gian janitor? I don't know. I mean,
As long
Might
as
as
it,
well be.
as long as they don't call it Gian Megatron, because talk about Buckethead.
Yeah, I am, have always been, and will always be an Okawara truther, but some of those designs definitely had me squinting. Let's just put it that way. But on to this thing.
Well, let's begin very quickly and let's talk about the, well, melee priority. Obviously, this unit is going to be decked out with weaponry for both medium and long range. We cannot give it a level 3 melee priority. I don't need another Atlas running around in higher cost. Therefore, medium melee
Yeah,
priority.
I think anything over 2 would be kind of silly. It'd feel just very power creepy, and not for any real rhyme or reason, like just kind of just excess for excess's sake. So yeah, I think 2 is about the highest you could reasonably get with this.
Oh, yeah. Counter, special counter. Now, for a counter, I was gonna give it with because it has double beam sabers. Like a 3 slash combo with the dual beam sabers for base counter.
Yeah, stuff we've seen before.
Yep, a basic 3 slash combo.
And then I think for the special counter, like I feel like if you aren't flipping out the waist railguns, what are you doing, right? Like that's
I
such
agree
an
with it.
iconic fixture of the MS.
And yep, point blank.
Oh,
I cannot type. Railgun rounds, railgun shots. That I think would work really nicely. I gotta agree. The it gives kind of like the feel of what the full armor double Zeta does, but hitting with the Xifias railguns, I think that it will give that oomph that many people are always looking for. I'd say, you know.
yeah, it has a very like kinetic kind of visceral feel to it. Now the
Uh,
question is, do you fire like do you pull out just the railguns or the railguns and the plasma cannons like, the iconic everything including the kitchen sink maneuver that we saw in Seed so many times?
I'd say railguns because very often you'd see that Kira would shoot the railguns when aiming to disable someone at close distance. So I don't know why you'd
That's true,
disable someone
yeah.
at close distance with railguns of all things, but I'm not one to question things.
Yeah, I feel like that would just rip right through them because there's no fall off at that point. Like you're just getting maximum output. That's kind of insane.
But either way, let's look at the close range, medium range, and long range slots. And for that reason, we probably should look at units in GBO2 that are of similar, similar performance. Therefore, I will pull up my GBO copy over here. But my belief would be do not give too many range slots. Give like a respectable amount of range slots, a lot of medium slots, and a respectable amount of close range slots again, so that you can at least not up the range output or the melee output as much, but you could put on quick loaders, resistances, and such. That's my belief.
Yeah, my big thing is I don't want to see people loading this thing up with melee and like force cooling system. So I'd like to see like medium be the category where it has the most slots, and then like a modest amount of close range and long range. I feel like that's the most sensible way to approach this, especially because this is 650. Like we don't want to go like full 4-star 700 with this thing.
Yeah. So let's look really quickly when we find an appropriate mobile suit to look at. What do you think would be a mobile suit that kind of would fall under this category? Maybe Ribao, especially since I know that you really like the Ribao.
I do really like the Rebow, whatever the orange red thing. Um, uh, I think like in terms of just like analogous MS within the same cost, I feel like the Delta Kai is probably pretty similar because it's sort of well rounded, but leans more towards range than melee. Like it's definitely not wanting for options up close, but that's usually not your go-to either.
So this is my belief of the slots. If you pay attention over here really quickly, you'll see that it has 14, 20, and 14. The reason for that is, again, you can put on a respectable amount of increase in performance without, over tuning it as you put it with like cooling system and melee powers. Sorry, melee power ups. So I'd say 14, 20, and 14 will force you to think where you want to put your slots, but to give you a lot of medium range slots where it will make you feel like maybe I should put more here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I almost think like 14, 18, 14, but 20 is probably still not like super overdoing it. Like I think
No,
20
it's
is
not.
like as high as you could go without it being outright ridiculous.
If you look by average, usually the units of this cost have about 48 part slots. So
Okay. I
so
mean,
I
yeah,
put it
that
there.
makes sense.
And especially since it's a 4 star, I decided, 48 being on the higher end, go for that because in comparison, for an example, the Delta Chi ironically has, I think, 15, 16, so that's 31 and 70. Oh no, it's 48 again. Yeah, okay. So
Huh.
even 4 stars have 48. So there we have it. That is, you know, better than expected, say. So,
Well, I think even then, like if you were to take two of the medium slots out and have to put them into close or long range, I think then those like that would be more broken. Like I don't want it having too many in either of those categories.
of course,
So yeah, I if we're going by the standard like, sorry, I'm weirdly congested as of late. I don't know what the hell's going on. Bear with me, but yeah, if we're going by the standard of 48 slots, I think this is a good distribution of that. That doesn't let you get too silly with the part loadouts that you can apply here.
really quickly, what I will do is I will include all of the weapons that we have in that we know. I guess you could say that the freedom has, so that we can really quickly. I should have probably done that before, but oh well.
But then
CPS
there's no
ready.
mystery in that, you know.
Yeah,
You don't get any of that theatricality.
you know what? What I might do is I might give it the last. Actually, yeah. Here, let me do this just out of curiosity. Times two, because the beam sabers are very often seen being used, in conjunctions, and then I'll do the Lacerta twin beam saber linked because we've seen it used as a beam Najinara plenty of times. And then
We
finally
have, yeah.
the sealed. Oh, uh, I almost misspelled that, so that's funny. Either way, so pretty straightforward kit. We see that it doesn't even use all 7 slots as we've seen with previous. Sorry, all 8 slots as we've seen with other units, and it even got the chance to fully have a sealed, unlike some of the previous units as well. So let's look at this really quickly. So starting off, I'd say that the Lupus Beam rifle, because as far as I remember, it's not the one that combines, unlike the Strike Freedom variant. We can play a bit with.
No, it's not.
That's the joke that I was making. We can play about with its stats a bit more and make it more of a traditional instant beam rifle. So we don't really have to think of giving a charge rate or anything like that. So what we could do is.
Uh,
Hmm?
well, I was gonna say one consideration was, and I mentioned this a while back, but like I think if you really want to capture the iconic Freedom Gundam, you need the full barrage, or was that what they called it?
The full burst, the full
Full
burst mod.
burst, yeah,
I thought
yeah,
that this would
with
be a good
the
ability, as instead of like how the full armor double Zeta's linked fire, that's something like that, where it wouldn't be just too OP that you could just spam it every 5 seconds, you know? Because if you do it as an actual weapon, someone can just put on quick loaders and just focus on that alone. Or it could be something that gets unlocked in quote unquote seed mode if we go with that.
I think the only thing that would be weird about seed mode is that like it technically wasn't anything to do with the unit itself, right? It was always specific to the pilot.
Yeah.
But I was thinking though, like because it is flight capable, you could potentially take it in that direction. So then the option button would be relegated to flight. But if you take that route, then you can't use it for linked fire, which also like the more I think about it, the more it just sounds like it'd be insanely broken. So I think like what you could do instead is have it just be a ridiculously high cooldown sub weapon.
For the flight, I was gonna, instead of giving it outright flight, because with the amount of weapons that it has, being in the air, it would make it more of a menace than anything. I was gonna give it maybe flap booster and be make it so that pretty much some of its weapons. I wouldn't give it a flap booster by definition. It would be called the high mat mode, which pretty much is if you read down here, one of its special equipment was its high mobility aerial tactics mode, which instead of it just outright flying like the average flight units, it would have a flap booster level 2 combined with the shooting skill that the Sinanju has, where you can, while you're flying, you can actually shoot your primary beam rifle.
Possibly, yeah. Wouldn't that be a little on the insane side for this thing at 650 though?
Well, it wouldn't have the skill that the Sinanju has, where it can break maneuver armor. So you'd have to get used to moving in the air, managing your thruster gauge, and at the same time, um, not falling pretty much, so while you're shooting things in the air. So you'd have to get
I think
creative with it.
I think if we're gonna take that route, I think it's really important to not have it be an instant stun beam rifle because that's where things would really quickly get out of hand. I think if you can like being able to fire it freely is one thing, but sorry, my throat is at war with me, I guess. Um, uh, I think being able to fire it while boosting is one thing, but like you should have to work to get staggers off of that.
Well, we could give it just a tri burst, like kind of like the news 5 burst, but it's gonna be a tri burst where you have to land 2 to 3 of them to stun, and you could have the charge shot, which takes, I don't know, 2 seconds to fully charge, which you could be able to just stun with it.
That could be fine.
Either that, or just to turn it into like the Zero Six beam rifle, where you can fast fire it, but you need to build up stun after a few shots, and the charge shot just becomes an instant.
I almost imagine something sort of like the Alex's beam rifle, which is a bit of a throwback, I guess, because we haven't seen a lot of things like it as of late. But
Oh yeah. Again, the Zero Six is kind of similar, but it just gets a lot more fire shots in between, because less hit rate.
yeah,
So we could do something like that. The question is, should we? Here's the thing: if you make a fast-firing beam rifle have overheat, you give it a buff in the aspect of you just have to wait between shots and you get more shots out of them, you know, out of the magazine, I guess, sort of out of the overheat cycle. If you give it though a preset amount, you have to have always the set amount. So we could make it a fast
um,
firing beam rifle that is reloadable.
I mean it was an EPAC powered beam rifle if I remember correctly.
Was it?
I think so. I'm not 100% on that, but I believe it was.
From what it reads here, it was powered by the Suits nuclear reactor.
I guess that
Mm.
would make more sense. Okay, so
We might have to make it just a low powered variant, I guess.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I think we have definitely seen like EPAC powered beam rifles operate on heat in this game, and also the inverse, like reactor powered beam rifles put on an ammo system. Like, I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but I feel like I've definitely seen it.
Well, let's give it a try of with heat. Let's just say that it's got what? Let's say the 1350 power, right? Its cooldown is
Right.
gonna be 17 seconds because I'm gonna give it a hit rate of 15% so that you can fire it quite a lot. Oh, sorry, cooldown, not cooldown. The cooldown is gonna be 0.8. Not gonna make it the point 0.5 that I've seen in some of them. The reload is gonna be 17 seconds, and the range is gonna be 350. As for the charge, I give it 2.5 seconds. You see how I'm going with it, I guess you could say. As you put it, I'm giving it the Alex's, you know, pause between shots of zero point 0.8. I'm giving it slightly quicker focus, slightly less range, half the hit rate of the Alex's rifle, and slightly longer reload.
Yeah, I think you can make it like a little bit beefier than the Alex's rifle because you are like we're comparing a 450 to a 650, so it's like at that point, like you can definitely up it a little bit as long as it's still just again like you should really have to work for staggers with it because the ability to fire it well in the middle of high speed movement can very quickly get out of hand, especially for something that
Well,
has this many options.
well, as I said, only when you're flying though with the Heimat is when you get to shoot it while boosting, not when you're even on ground.
I guess yeah, that's fair. I was thinking just while you're boosting like on the ground, I probably misheard that.
No, no, no. As I said, when it's using the Heimat
Yeah,
form. So
no, that
again,
makes sense.
it's when you're boosting near, well above ground. So you need to be flying, quote unquote. Let's see, Lacerda double beam rifle. Honestly, should we just give it the classic double beam saber damage, like nothing too special, I guess you could say?
I think so. Yeah, like it mostly has emphasis on the ranged attacks anyway, so it's like
I'll give it 2500 with 2-second cooldown. Oh, I just
yeah, that seems
bad
pretty
fingers.
sensible.
So the CIWS, we've seen it sometimes either fire extremely quickly in uh in seed, like like double machine guns, like you'd seen on aircraft carriers, which is why I'm guessing it's the CIWSs instead of them being Vulcan guns. So I think that we should give it slightly better than average Vulcan. So I was gonna give it like 140 with 50 rounds. Oh, this is cooldown. This is 50 rounds. I would give it actually a long reload because they are a lot. They do a lot of damage for Vulcan. So I was gonna give it like a 12 to 15-second reload. I'd give it an 160 range to say that we've done a little bit different, and I'd give it a stun rate of 3%. So you have to waste at least 20 bullets of the Vulcan of the CIWS to stun anything.
Um, hmm. I'm almost wondering if it should even be like 2% or something. 'Cause if it does that much damage, like
If it's 2% though, you're gonna have to use all of your Vulcans.
I guess that's true. The
The
question is, are we gonna have any other weapons that are suppression based in their stun beside the beam rifle and the Vulcans?
the the plasma beam cannons were not really aiming for that. You know, I was gonna have the plasma beam cannons be more of a you charge to shoot the two large beam shots, The
Okay.
the railguns, they're just railguns. They were gonna be just 2 instants with piercing.
Yeah, because we've seen railguns like elsewhere in UC, and I mean, it's. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule that says we have to make AU railguns be depicted in the same way, but it also seems like when in doubt, that's the place to go. Like,
Yeah.
just stick with what we know railguns to be functionally. So yeah, I agree. The railguns are kind of spoken for already. The plasma is like the only thing that's really foreign by GBO standards because I mean we don't really see that elsewhere.
Agreed.
So yeah, I guess that's fair. I guess you can only really pair the Vulcans with the beam rifle to kind of piggyback suppression like that. Because that would be
So
my only concern is just it getting ridiculous real fast if you had too many other ways to combo suppression.
so as you can see right here, um, I'm working right now really quickly on the Xifias railgun, which I've given 2800 power, which I'm giving it the same power as the Hyakuseki Kai's ground variant, the land combat type in damage. But it fires two of them, so it's 1800 times two. But the reason why for that is, unlike the Hyakuseki Kai ground type, you have to stop to shoot them. And out of the 4 rounds that you have, you're gonna eat up two of them.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. Like you basically only get 2 shots.
A decent reload of 20 seconds, just uh, slightly about average for normal beam cannons, right? Nothing too different. And 500 range to make
Right.
it slightly on the longer side, I guess, because they are railguns. You're not going to be shooting them up close and personal like Kira did in the anime. Not to be rude or anything.
Yeah, like I mean, C definitely had combat that was more concerned, like for better or worse, more concerned with being flashy than being believable or practical, I guess is a better word to use for that. But obviously, if you're going to adapt that to GBO, you have to imagine how the people playing the unit are going to use it. And it's like, generally, you don't get within humping distance of a dude to fire railguns. Like, it's usually not the best way to capitalize on them.
Now, for the beam cannons, I had two thoughts. Either make them just a normal beam cannon, or give them a charge to make them a heavy stagger double shot beam cannon instead. So, you actually benefited by having one beam rifle that is either a suppression or a insta-stun. CWS for dedicated suppression, railguns for a dedicated insta-stun, and beam cannons for a single shot dedicated heavy stagger that wastes all of your overheat in one shot, and you have a long cooldown of like 30 seconds.
Um, well, I mean, I got to think about this. Have we ever really seen the plasma, like any plasma based weapons, which I guess really just plasma cannons that were, to my recollection, largely the same across like every mobile suit that used them in Cosmic Era, but I never really saw different modes of fire. Right, like it was just red blobs, right?
Well, it was a continuous beam usually, so it could
Yeah.
be a stop to shoot a constant death beam like the full armor double Zeta or the MP double Zeta instead.
Yeah, like it was just like a big red line, right? Like that's generally how it was depicted.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. But and like we never really saw like varying modes of fire or like
Not that I re-
consistencies kind of VSBR style, right?
Not that I remember, no.
Yeah, that's
So
I'm just making sure I'm recalling that properly.
what we could do is give it 1,000 damage, but it hits, let's just say, 7 ticks, right?
Okay.
Give it a cooldown. Actually, it won't have a cooldown. It will just overheat, so it doesn't matter. Hit rate 100%.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Reload, give it like 50 seconds, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, because I also don't recall seeing it like. I mean, it's been a while to say the least, but I don't recall seeing it fired frequently. Like generally, people would bust them out and just kind of let them rip once in a while, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So
I
pretty
think
much,
the one exception might have been the abyss in See Destiny. I don't know if that was just specific to that. I could also be remembering that wrong. It's been eons.
but 70 6 second focus, 600 range. So you have medium to close with the beam rifle, um, close with the CIWS, medium to long with the rail guns, and long range with the plasma cannons. So we have that kind of variety. And then we have the twin linked beam saber, which I'm gonna give it a higher damage than its beam saber, 2700, and I'll give it a 2.5 second reload. And finally, for the shield, I'm just gonna give it a slightly above average, is what my thoughts were. Tell me if you think that we shouldn't give it a slightly above average, especially since the shield is somewhat small. But I was thinking to give it something like 5,500.
I think like average to yeah, like slightly above average. Nothing too fancy. Because the shield itself was fairly standard issue, right? Like it even looks like a lot of what a lot of other Zaft units have by that point.
For sure.
Like stuff from that particular generation. So yeah, that sounds about right.
Now I'm gonna
I
give it
kind of
the
like
base.
the.
Hmm?
I was gonna say I kind of like the general idea that this revolves largely around knowing what weapons to use and when, and it's mostly based on the distances like that they're effective at, and just the distances you're at presently. Sort of similar to actually the land combat Hyakushiki. My God, like you alluded to, is also sort of similar to the Rigazid, I guess.
Yeah, that would be kind of like that. Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a neat concept.
Now the high mat mode is one of the new skills that I'm gonna be giving it, which is gonna be giving the flap booster level 2 and allows primary weapon to be shot while boosting in the air.
It would give people more of a reason to utilize that because in a lot of cases, when a unit has midair high speed movement, it's just kind of like a gimmick or like a little bonus, like something you don't see utilized very heavily. It's a little different when it's like full on flight. Like obviously we've all gotten very used to seeing the Shazar Type A just ripping through the sky, but when it's just like standard fare high speed movement while airborne, we don't usually see that utilized particularly aggressively.
Agreed.
So I think it's interesting to see any kind of unit that incentivizes that because it's a different line of play. It's something that we don't see really anywhere else.
Right now I'm giving it high spec comeback level 2, quick boost level 3, glide structure level 4, high performance balancer melee combo controller, and high performance radar level 3. The high performance radar level 3 is mostly to work alongside its ranged weapons.
Yeah, it does have quite the arsenal.
Uh, Next, I'm gonna give it a wing binder cushioning,
Yeah, I think that's fair
and
given
I'll
just
give
what
it
a
a level
large target
4.
those things are.
Yeah, I'll give it a level 4. I'll give it a maneuver armor a level 1, so that it will not get stunned instantly and forget it exists.
Yeah,
Uh,
I wouldn't want to go higher than one. How do we feel about like forced injector? I think like level
yeah,
one or two.
I was gonna give it a level 2 force injector, although most 4 stars have level 3 or up. So maybe I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I think
Um,
two is reasonable, especially for like the amount of gimmicks this thing has. Like most 4 stars can't like just fly at you in the sky and stun you from there.
Agreed. High performance counter program level 2, obviously, for it to be able to access its counter at 50% health. Balancer we already gave. Um, Actually, yeah, the facelift armor.
I actually kind of forgot about that for a second.
Facelift armor until 50% health, right?
Yeah, so
N-
fairly standard, like chop 'em armor, beam coating type
Negates
mechanic.
50% of ballistic damage and reduces stagger. It doesn't negate it fully, so build up stun still can stun you eventually. But let's just say a heavy stagger will become a normal stagger. A normal stun will become nothing but build up stun. You get what I'm saying? So bazookas will still. Actually, for that reason alone, I might take the fall prevention system off because you technically have it. Hmm. Now here is a, a good question. Should I take it off or should I keep it as is? I know I'll give it a flight
Uh,
control. Hmm?
I feel like fall prevention system is not too egregious by itself. Like even in conjunction with these things, I don't think it's too bad.
I also gave it a flight control program level 4 so that it can boost in the air because it wouldn't make sense to give it high mat, which is flap booster level 2 and not have it have flight control program.
Yeah, you want to incentivize people to actually like take advantage of that.
I'll give it the full burst mode skill, which will be available at 50%. Boosts mobility by
Okay.
5 base speed and 10 high speed movement, and
Yeah, that's not too crazy.
makes full burst weapon available. Now, for that, I just came up with this idea, so you might like it. It will be a fire everything weapon, kind of like uh, obviously the guy mode, right?
Yeah, that's and that is also a 650, so direct comparison can be made there.
Exactly. So we're gonna give it 1,000 damage, right? And we're gonna time it by the beam rifle, railgun, plasma beam cannon. So times 5, right?
Right.
So you get 5,000 damage. I'll give it a cooldown of 3 seconds. Sorry, 4 seconds actually, and that will surprise you why. 60% hit rate,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
and I'm gonna give it a long cooldown. So if you overheat it, you've done it to yourself. 60 seconds, a full minute of a reload, and I'm gonna make its range 450. And you're gonna need to
Yeah, I like
focus it,
that.
and you're gonna need to focus it for 4 seconds between shots. And it's gonna be a heavy stagger times 5. So here we have the gimmick of the freedom, which is its full burst mode, and we have still one more skill slot available. Hmm. On that note, what skill should we give it due to it having one more skill available? Well, you see, oh, forgive me for that. On top of that, it had a multi-lock on system. So I'm gonna give it a skill which will make many, I guess you could say, support players happy, and I'm gonna give it for its long range the observational data link. And that will pretty much
Ah,
finish this all around, mostly ranged monster.
I gotta wonder though, is observational data link like kind of pushing it a little bit? Like, I guess it's nice in that I feel like at 650, it's harder and harder to get people to play support. even though you have things like the Rizel Type C that are kind of insane, the Shazar Type B, the Yakdoga,
Well,
but
the reason why is that there are a lot of supports that are better at pretty much doing damage, and some do not have observational detailing. So, if you want to focus on the supports that do a lot of damage, you could remove the observational detailing. Now, my other option would be giving it damage control level 1 because of its giant binders.
um, my only concern there would be damage control level 1 with the wingbinder cushioning and the maneuver armor and the phase shift armor. I feel like that could sort of start to get away from you there.
Mm. Then maybe anti-blast stabilizers? Just
Yeah, I think that'd be fine.
a gimmick, not a gimmick. It's, I guess, to work with the facelift armor is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I can
And
agree with that.
overall, this is it. The basic 3 slash combo with the two sabers, point blank railgun shots, 14, 20, and 14 on close, medium, and long range. The Lupus Beam Rifle Lacerta Beam Saber times 2, 76mm CIWS, Cepheus Railgun times 2, Bolena Plasma Beam Cannon times 2, Lacerta Twin Beam Saber Linked, full burst mode available when in full burst mode, and the Shield of the Freedom Gundam on top of the High Performance Balancer Melee Combo Controller, High Performance Radar level 3, Fall Prevention System, High Mat mode, which is a new skill, High spec comeback level 2, quick boost level 3, glide structure level 4, wing binder cushioning level 4, maneuver armor, force injector level 2, high performance counter level 2, phase shift armor, which is available at 50%, flight control program, sorry, available until 50%, flight control program level 4, and full burst mode level 1, which is available after 50%, and finally the anti-blast stabilizer level 1.
I actually had a thought.
Mhm.
Well, I guess it already has quick boost, so giving an assault boost would probably be a little much,
Assault
or just a little bit
booster
redundant.
Assault Booster, though, is unfortunately raid only thus far, unless they start making them non-raid only, I guess.
Well, that's true, actually. I guess I hadn't even considered that.
Now,
Yeah, this looks fine then.
up next, we have one of my personal favorites, the Double O Riser. Well, to start off strong with that, it's a 700 raid, and the reason why is the Double O Riser, just like the Double O Quanta, were seen as pretty much almost equals to some extent, depending on how you saw it. The Double O Quanta was the ultimate form of the Double O Riser, but in the long run, it was there to be a means of communication, as it was said in the actual movie. So we're looking at the Double O Riser as its own unit at 700. So let's look at it really quickly. 22,000 HP, 22 ballistic and beam resistance, 34 melee resistance, range strength and melee strength of 35, 140 movement speed, 235 top speed, 85 thruster gauge, and 69 turning speed. Nice.
Nice.
Now, melee priority for such a raid that we're going to be looking at is going to be strong. I cannot see it as anything else.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a raid that isn't like a shooting raid, especially, I mean, at least not primarily a shooting raid, then I feel like you want level 3 melee priority.
Now, let's look at it really quickly, and let's look at all of its weapons outright, shall we? Actually, no, we're going to look at the counter first, but afterwards we're going to look at everything. Now, for counters, I was thinking maybe a classic 3 strike with the dual beam sabers again, but it ends into an X slash.
Yeah,
You
I
know
mean,
what?
why not? Because obviously, if it has a special counter, the default counter is usually something very typical and recognizable.
Now, for the special counter, I thought we could do something cool. Quantizing behind the enemy and dropping one single slash through the back.
That would be pretty cool, actually, because we don't really see anything else like that in. Because, like, I feel like it's really easy to just go for the most over the top thing you can imagine with flashy, high cost 4 stars like this, especially. But, like, it's definitely more interesting to do something that, like, you couldn't just find on any other, like, big spooky Gundam that's loaded to the gills. Because, like, the Freedom could do just, like, a bunch of different melee attacks, or like the double X, or any number of things. But this is something unique to the double O riser rather.
Now, for its slots, I was thinking of giving it because the double O we've seen has a lot of ranged weapons. Its whole gimmick is mobility, right?
Right.
And I was aiming to give it to make it lean kind of like the Gundam Mark V towards, although its melee weapons are, you know, originally when you look at the melee weapons until you see them in full combat, they look lackluster. Same with the Gundam Mark V. When you look at it, you think, it's a ranged raid. But the moment you swing once with its melee weapon, you realize, oh boy, it does damage.
Uh, I mean, I do think that with the riser, people generally associate it with the GN swords anyway, right? So I feel like people are going to expect that first and foremost.
Yeah. But I was thinking of giving it like something like the following. Um, a chunk of close range slots, a decent chunk of medium range and long range. That way, you cannot really build it for resistances by mods, and you cannot build it for a
Yeah.
lot of damage either for ranged options. Because the double O, although it's perfectly balanced between ranged and melee strength, we've never really seen it stay primarily at the long range. I mean, so
No, that was. I mean, it was never really Setsuna's style to do that.
I was thinking something like giving it something along the lines of like 25 close range slots, 20 medium, and like 9 long.
Ah, that might be fine. Yeah.
So let's do 25, 20, and 9. So now, what I'm gonna do is the double O is more often oh, I cannot English. Associated with its Gen Swords 2 rather than with the Gen Sword 3.
Yeah, that is true.
So what I'm gonna do is a Gen Sword 2 times 2. And what my thoughts are is make it more like the beam guns of the Rick DSCs, the Daija Traversia, and the Daija CA, but give it a small amount of hit rate.
Okay. Yeah, that seems reasonable enough.
So give them like 700 power, right, to make it a bit on the higher end. Give it a zero cooldown so that it can fast fire. We've seen it fire charge shots, and that charge shot I will explain how we're gonna do it afterwards. Give them like 8, 9% hit rate. What do you think? I'd say 8% hit rate.
Um, I guess that sounds about right. Yeah, I'm trying to like get the other like similar kind of analogous beam pistol weapons in my head now, and I can't really recall what they usually have,
About
which is
18%,
sad.
about 18% to like 15%.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say it's sad considering how much DJCA I play, but
Yeah,
could not immediately recall.
happens to the best of us. That's why I have GBO2 open to my side.
Good thing for that. Yeah, I guess that sounds about right then, because we want this to be just a little bit better than that.
We want to beat primary, especially. Give it a 350
Yeah.
range. Now, the focus, I'm gonna make it 5 seconds. The reason why is if you remember when the double O charged up its sword, it fired a very wide single beam that fired like a single arrow out. that will make a very large projectile that does decent chunk of damage.
Yeah, that's fair. Would
So,
also make it kind of interesting by the standards of like beam pistol weapons because we don't really see that in those.
yep. So I'm gonna give it 15% build up stun and insta stun when charged.
Yeah, that seems
Pretty straight,
reasonable enough.
pretty straightforward. Now for the gens or the secondary saber mode. So it's literally just the beam saber, the gen swords just in their saber mode. Nothing too special. Now I have a few ideas for the double O, and I have a lot of exciting ideas, I guess you could say. So let's look at it. For the Gen Sword times 2 Beam Saber, or sorry, Saber mode, because the Beam Saber will come out afterwards. Um, hmm.
I think just for the main melee being that, especially given that it's going to have other melee weapons and all other sorts of neat little quirks, I think you can make those fairly standard,
Yeah,
like just typical, like what you would do with dual beam saber stuff.
yeah, I was thinking about 2900, 2800. Like 2900 is the most common in that in this cost bracket for a Beam Sabers overall. May it be single or double, like the Phoenix and the Unicorn have 2900 in their NTD mode. The Enhanced Double Zeta in its double beam sabers has 3300 for crying out loud. The Zaku 4 IP on its dual beam knuckles has 2500, but its multipliers are outwardly. You get the idea.
Yeah.
The Zulu's Hit Claw has 3250 to level 4, so 700. So I was thinking about like 3000, like make it the sweet spot.
Yeah, it's funny because like my immediate reaction when you give us 3,000 power is like, man, that seems kind of ridiculous. But then you consider how ridiculous 700 raids across the board are, or at least like native 4-star 700
Hey,
raids.
don't forget that the Sinanju in its normal beam saber has 2800, in its beam Najinata 2900, and its beam shortcut axe with its insane modifiers does 3000.
Oh yeah.
The Stein's beam saber does 3100 as well. The Sazabi's large beam saber also is 3100, and its double beam saber is 2800. So this is leaning closer to the lower end.
Yeah, it's relatively tame.
And also I'll give it
Like
a
I said, it seems ridiculous until you remember like exactly what kind of silly shit goes on at 700.
oh yeah. Now up next, I'm gonna give it its DN beam machine gun and Vulcan combo. The reason why, and beam machine gun. Let me actually be smart
How do you do that?
by shortening the numbers.
I might need to take some notes because I think I struggle with that one.
What I'm gonna do is, because we're firing two Vulcans and two beam machine guns, or we can do it like one arm and one wing aims to one direct. Actually, that sounds like a cool idea, because the GN Vulcans of the double O are mounted on the arm, and the GN beam machine gun is mounted on the wing. So you can have one wing and one Vulcan pointing at an enemy. So you're technically firing two shots at the same time. So you know, I'm gonna give it though on the higher end of damage of 200, because if you notice, for an example with the Hyakushi Kikai and its pulse laser, pulse laser has 10% hit rate, but it does 250 base damage. That is insane. So I could make it like 300 power, 0 cooldown, 10% hit rate, and a reload of 15 seconds with a 200 range.
I always forget, like, I forget it less playing this game, but for many years I would like periodically forget that the Hyakushi Kai has a pulse laser in its head. Like that's one of those things you read it and you're like, The hell? Like what was Okawara cooking that day?
But yeah, so 300 power, 10%. So you have literally 10 shots between, so 20 shots in total if you count it, I guess, with 50% hit rate. So you need to empty at least 40% of your hit rate on that. Because let's be honest, the double O does not have any other major, um, I guess you could say, build up. The other thing is the missiles, but honestly, we cannot really hop on the GN micro missiles to do that much.
I guess so, yeah.
Now, up next, I'm gonna give it the GN Beam Saber times 2,
Yeah, you gotta go there somewhere along the lines.
and I'm gonna give it 2900 power. 2-second cooldown, and here is where my thought was to give a heavy attack to the double O Riser with its Riser sword coming out of its. I actually no, I shouldn't give it here. I should give it probably in the GN swords.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. Plus that'd be a little bit more novel because we don't have a whole lot of we don't have a whole lot of MS in this game that smack you with a solid sword, right?
Well, the heavy attack, if you remember, we did talk about this a bit earlier in the week, where we were thinking of making it like a vertical strike and then opening the beam sabers into the riser sword. Unless we make that as
Oh, that's
a,
true, yeah.
as a heavy attack during ransom.
I do kind of like that idea because I mean that's generally when we saw that type of maneuver happen in the series, right?
Yeah.
Like it was mostly relegated to Trans Am silliness.
Up next, I'm gonna put the GN micro missiles, which we're gonna give. Um, I'd say about like. Let's look at this. Right, I'm actually just curious now. I'm gonna look at the full armor seventh for this with its leg missile pod. I'll give it 400 power to be less than the seventh. Zero cooldown, 16 ammo. Um, why not? 18-second reload. 400 range to be on the lower end. And per missile, I'll give it what, like 10% or 15% build up stun.
Yeah, that seems sensible enough.
Up next, GN Sword 2, Najinara mode. I don't remember what it was called. I think it was called linked mode as well in Double O, where it pretty much formed as a beam Najinara.
I guess I could do that. Yeah.
Let's look at this. Hmm. Oh, Twin Lance mode is what it was called.
Oh, there you go.
Now this one will get slightly better stats at 3100, and it's gonna get like a 3.5 second cooldown. And the double beam sabers actually I'll give them half a second more cooldown as well. So you have to know which ones you're switching between.
Yeah.
And then finally, actually no, this is good I'd say, don't you think, for weaponry? Unless we want to give it
Oh,
Gen Sword 3, but there would be no point really, would there?
I mean, I was thinking like just because it's such an iconic part of the loadout that you could give the GN Sword 3 plus the that still has its own rifle mode, which
Yeah,
would be which would also give you the perfect like array of weapons. Like I think it's one of those things where if you can do it and it was prominently featured in the series, like why not, right? Plus its
yeah,
rifle mode was kind of depicted as more almost more like beam bazooka e, like sort of
yeah,
like a buster rifle type weapon.
yeah, kinda. So we could give it like a slightly on the higher end in damage output and make it a single shot in stun. Nothing too insane. Kind of like the Delta Plus is a beam cannon. That would be actually nice. So give it like 2000 power, 5-second cooldown, 80% hit rate, reload of let's just say 20 seconds, 400 range, instant stun, 60% stagger value. How's that? Pretty basic stats, right?
Yeah, nothing too crazy.
And then GN Sword 3, Sword mode or Saber mode, which is gonna be an extra 2000. You know what? Because this is actually a longer weapon, I'm gonna give 2800 power, making it again on the lower end, and give it 3-second cooldown.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That I'll say looks like a great setup for me at least.
You know what's crazy is
Yeah.
if you could somehow fit a ninth weapon in the loadout, you also have the beam coated version of the GN Sword 3, but
No, the Gen
maybe
Sword
we'll
3 was the coded version always. Remember that?
was it?
Yeah.
God, I clearly need to revisit Double. It's such a like it's one of the better AU Gundam outings, I think. Like I think it's such a good show. I just haven't seen it in far too long.
I'll give it a melee combo controller level 2 because, let's be honest, Setsuna did melee a lot.
Yeah, most definitely.
So it's also a really bulky unit, so I'm gonna give it maneuver armor level 3. It's wide, it's an easy target to hit.
It is.
So I might even give it a little bit of damage control. Not too much, I'm not gonna give it enhanced double zeta damage
Yeah,
control.
we don't need another one of those things running around.
Let's look at this.
I was
Look,
gonna say one is enough, but if anything, one is maybe kind of too much. Maybe I'm probably biased as somebody who plays a lot of support at 700, but yeah,
now I'm gonna give it force injector level 3 because again, it's a nimble unit. It's meant to be a nimble unit.
it is. Yeah,
Anti-blast stabilizer. Um, Flight control program. We've seen it very often be in the air.
absolutely. So
Uh,
now the question is, since we just broached the subject of the enhanced double zeta, do we want this thing to be capable of rolling? And I almost think we shouldn't. Like, I almost feel like maybe it'd be more interesting to put this thing in a position where people can't just dodge roll out of trouble, like mash that
e-
panic button.
Either that or just give it a dodge roll during transam.
Okay, yeah, actually, that's a good idea. I don't know why that didn't occur to me immediately.
That's why I'm here. I mean, what?
True enough.
Let's see.
Two
Uh,
heads are better than one, especially when one of them is mine.
let's see. Should we have like a special solder equipment buffer?
I think so. Like this thing has the shoulder pads straight out of the 90s power suits.
Let's look at this. What else do we want to add? So we have assault booster, balancer, 3 swings, maneuver armor, force injector, anti-blast stabilizer, flight control program, heavy attack, high performance counter program level 2, and the special solder equipment buffer level 3. Um, okay, let's knock this out of the park. First of all, the GN field around the double O is very often referred to being able to at least withstand some of the lower end beam weapons.
Yeah, that's true.
So I could give it a GN field as a skill, which until 50% health reduces beam damage by 25%. Not much. It doesn't reduce stun buildup or anything, just straight damage reduction.
I think that's fair enough. Because I mean, like, I guess you want something to something about Double O that I always found really interesting is that it's really the only case in a Gundam universe of any kind, at least that I can recall immediately, where beam weapons aren't just like superlative, like they aren't just like unilaterally superior to ballistic weapons.
Yes,
And so I feel like if you wanted to really capture the essence of a Double O unit guesting in GBO, you really want to capitalize on that, like something that shows that it's not really doesn't really play by all the same rules that we're used to without
it's
necessarily breaking the rules of the game.
of course. It's not something that is absolutely, OP, I guess you could say, still, but it's still there to just make you rethink your tactics because its resistances are on the lower spectrum of 700s when it comes to ballistic and beam resistances. Yet,
Well, notably, it's also something we've never. I mean, it's also something that we have seen before. Like, it's not something completely out of the ordinary. Like, I
mhm,
mean, we have beam coding.
yeah. What else should we give it? Well, did I give it high spec ambac? I never gave it high spec ambac. Now that would be a mistake of me on my end, but do not mind me at all.
That would be pretty weird.
I'll give it a counter boost, right? Because very often melee was seen to be its priority.
True enough.
I might give it the classic flap booster, mm, or I could give it two new skills: the riser system and the transem system. Now, going straight into the transem, it's gonna be just a power up, just straight power up, right? With the moment that the transem activates, um, actually, yeah, this is gonna be a great idea, I think. So transem is gonna be a power up ability, right?
Right.
But transem, we have two choices. We can either make it activate at a percentage of health, or it becomes available to activate at a percentage of damage taken, like the NTD. And after a set amount of time, you can go to the next stage and make it into, well, the transem burst.
So sort of like the Siskade.
Either that or like the unicorns, where you start at the NTD and then you go into awakening.
I guess that's true. Yeah, that would be another
So,
comparison you could make.
so the transem system is going to be available at 80% health. Activating it, uh, activating it with a special weapon button
Makes sense.
grants um, plus 10 mobility speed, plus 10 high speed movement. So already, as you can see, it's on the higher end of mobility. Flap booster changes weapons behavior. And gives transem burst skill. So let me really quickly. There we go. So my thought process with this is during transem, you get, as I mentioned, the transem burst, which, when activated, heals allies and self for 2000 health, so less than the Fenix. But unlike the Fenix, in a 250 meter, actually 300-meter radius, because we've seen the double O covering the entire celestial being mothership with its transom burst.
Yeah, sure enough.
And it keeps transom permanent. But the disadvantage that you get, you lose 10 health per tick.
Yeah, I think that makes it a little more interesting.
Because that way, you get the power up of transom, you get to be friendly to your allies and heal them, but as you can imagine, the moment you activate that skill to heal allies and yourself, you also start losing health. Now, either I'm gonna do this, or what I might do is I might just do transom outright, like the NTD where you lose where you lose health during transom instead. Actually, that would be a better idea, wouldn't it?
Probably.
Yeah, make it like that. And then for this, no longer lose health. And to make it a bit more interesting for the transom burst, available after a minute of being in transom. Because it gives such a great buff of healing allies and taking away the damage you lose, it's again a better or worse, depending on how you see it, NTD. You keep your damage, you heal your allies, and make transom permanent, but you have to live with the changes in your weapons. Now, the changes in the weapons, I'm gonna write them here, down here, to make things a little bit more interesting.
I almost wondered, would you want the transom burst to be the type of thing where it's just available at a lower health threshold?
Well, the reason I think 80% is because the double O is, although on the shorter side of mobile suits, it's still a very wide mobile suit. It's wider than it's taller. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's definitely he
So
is
when
a
you
broad fellow.
so when you look at the double O, you're thinking, square, I can shoot in it. So the major changes that I'm gonna give it is that the GN Sword 2 times 2 rifle mode and the let me GN Sword 2 saber mode change into the GN Sword 2 times 2 beam shot mode, where if you remember, it fired constant suppressive beams like shotguns, and the GN beam saber mode, right?
Right.
So the rifle, so the beam shot mode switches to from the quick fast firing double beam shots, which have 700. It will do. Let's look at the shrapnel Zuka of the unicorn, shall we?
Yeah, that seems like a decent place to
It will
start.
do 200. Oh, yeah, man, I need to change the colors of these all and make them really quickly. paler color for us to see. So 200 power. It will have 4 seconds cooldown, but actually no, I'll make it 6 seconds cooldown. Its hit rate is gonna be 60%, and when charged, it's gonna be 80%. Reload of 15 seconds again, and range drops to 200. Actually, no, 175 because it's a shotgun, with a focus again of 5 seconds, and the stun build up is gonna be per pellet, so I'm gonna give it 15%. I again need to change the colors, but it also has 6 pellets, so you don't have as many as normal, right? So if you miss a
Right.
few, you're screwed. And instant stun when
That is one way
charged.
to put it.
So let me really quickly do this. Forgive my friends. But that's a thing that very much always interests me. Either way, so as you can see already, the changes are already very different as you're losing the medium range beam rifles for a beam shot rifle, which gives you in the instance, but it shortens a lot your range. Why enter that range when you can use your beam Vulcans for the same, I guess you could say, effect with a similar effort, right?
Right.
The beam saber mode of the beam sabers will up their damage to 3200, making it higher than most. 2 second cooldown still, and a focus of 5 seconds, where we finally get the Transem Riser, which is going to be a vertical strike and then a horizontal strike, which the vertical strike is going to be lower, so people can, sorry, slower, so that people can either tackle to counter it, but at the same time, it's going to be a threat if you ignore it, so that the side swing of the Transem Riser as the second strike will catch a lot of enemies in comparison.
Yeah, it'll force you to be kind of discerning about when you want to use it because it's so easy to interrupt, so telegraphed.
Exactly. And this, I think, unless you have any other idea, is what I would do with the double O riser.
I think this thing's loaded enough already.
Well, like, we could change things, we could min max things. I would say at this point, lower its health to 20,000, you know, because it's proving itself that it would be a challenge to deal with. But either way, um, this is what I would do. It might be also biased that I don't see some of the performance being too high. If it is, please write down in the comments below. But yeah, for those interested, once all of these are done, I'm gonna be releasing the document that we worked on this, as we've talked about this, I think, Alter, where you suggested that we should probably make more of these eventually, just out of making this entertaining enough for other people to watch.
Well, there's
So
definitely other AU things that I think it'd be interesting to crack into. Like the ones from the survey were all the most obvious choices from their given series, like the Freedom from Seed, the Double O Riser from Double O, the Burning Gundam from G Gundam, and so on. But there's a lot of more interesting and nuanced, and I guess by GBO standards, just esoteric units in these other in these AUs that I think it'd be a lot more interesting to try and adapt to this game. Like off the top of my head, like I mean the Epion, which technically doesn't have any ranged weapons unless you're counting the retcon Vulcans that they had to give it because they had to own that animation era late in the series. But I mean, in most of its depictions, even like in other games and such, it almost never has those. They usually just go with the original verdict that this thing has exclusively melee weapons.
I
So,
I agree with that. That would be honestly though a very fun thing to try to, work with Gundam standards.
and that's just one example, obviously. Like, I'm sure you could You could find far weirder things in
Get love.
AUs that you could attempt to adapt to this game.
Oh,
The Gedlav. I
it's
mean,
you
that's
see.
I guess it's technically UC, but I mean, it's
That will be something to look at. It.
I mean, Victory era UC might as well be an AU. It's so alien compared to what we have up till that point. Even just like the mobile suit design, the bug like heads are very different from what we're used to traditionally seeing. We'll say, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of other A units I like to get into, or AU units rather. I mean, even looking at these two, like I've always considered the Strike Freedom to be just a much better design than the traditional Freedom. Like it's just a perfected version of the same concept. I always considered the 007 sword the coolest version of the 00. So it's like even just for my own sake, there's just alternate spins on the things we covered in this video that I wouldn't mind taking a look at later down the road. So
Well, as always, this was actually a lot of fun. This video has gone long, but I'm not really complaining. The Double O and the Freedom were loaded units, especially the Double O being a lot more gimmicky than what we're used to, but that's literally Double O as a series overall.
ain't
But,
it the truth?
but we're gonna double on to these. I think I used the word right. Forgive me. We're gonna check out more units as they come, I guess. But for now, this is pretty much it. It's been another long video. Forgive us, but just going into a rant on figuring out what you can do with some units is a challenge, and trying to also balance them is a challenge. But what can you do? Am I right?
Well, we'll get there. We'll get to that 45-ish mark one of these days.
We'll just get there eventually. Who knows? We'll figure it out.
You know what
Either
we'll
way,
do? We'll do a video that's like the Leo and like the Tieran or something. It's like you just fire those out.
just
That's
just
not cheating, right?
that's just 3 minutes. It's give it just a balancer, give it a dodge roll, give it like two swings, and call it a day.
That one can just go straight to shorts, I guess.
Either way, thank you all that you sat through our ramblings of madmen. I guess that's the best way to put it. These at this point. I
Yeah,
hope
if you
that you
made it this far into the video, you're the best.
we hope that you enjoyed it. We're gonna be jumping and diving more into these in the future, and who knows, we might even make podcasts out of these where we're talking about the mobile suits themselves rather than what we do in GBO2. If we talk about this long about balancing them, imagine trying to figure out what their philosophy is and why their designs are as goofy as they are, looking like toys, looking like this, looking like that. Oh wait, it's to sell toys. Wait, what?
I definitely have a mouthful to say about that subject, so there is some potential for that.
Either way, we hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day as always, and we'll talk to you later.
Till next time.
Signing out.